All right, so here's the deal, Leo, okay? Can you guys all see this okay? I know it's a little bit smaller than what we're used to, but it's still like significantly larger than everything else that's in any other classroom. So, all right, so I want to do a quick overview. Again, we're only using Vine charcoal, V-I-N-E charcoal, and we're using some kneaded eraser, right? So this stuff's kind of fun. You've already played it, and some of you lost it and didn't tell me about it, you jerks. Anyway, all right, here we go. Yeah, a bunch of scumbags stealing my kneaded eraser. All right, so anyway, here we go. So I got my plain white paper here, and I'm looking at my objects, right? I got my still life set up, so here, I'll just turn this real quick. Whoa, everyone say hi. Hi, yeah, you're on the, there you go. Hi, you're on TV. All right, so I've got my, whoa, this is like depth, right? Am I the computer? It's like a first person game, right? I need like a dun, 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 dun. Okay, all right. So I've got my still life set up right here, right? So what I'm gonna do, again, using that kind of L7 idea, I'm gonna kind of line up what I'm looking at, and I can kind of shrink it a little bit. There we go, something like that, okay? So this is what I want to show. Anything beyond it doesn't really matter, but I have to show everything that I see. Does that make sense? Right? So right now I'm looking at these couple bottles here, and that's what I want to show. I've even got a little bit of this black fabric. I want to make sure to show that as well. All right, so back down, whoop, to the paper. All right, so here we go. So I'm going to try and look at these objects. The first thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to pick one of the objects kind of at random, right? I also have to think about which orientation I want to set my paper. So do I want it to be up and down? Do I want it to be nice and tall because I have tall objects, or do I want it to be side by side? Because if I go landscape with it, then obviously I have the ability to show more objects that are a little bit maybe more kind of squat. In my case, if you remember the objects I just showed you on the still life, my objects seem to be very tall in nature. So I'm going to want to move my paper around here a little bit and have them go through.
I'll gladly pay you Tuesday for a marker today.
Go for it. So I've got my paper orientated in a portrait style. That's what we call up and down. Portrait versus landscape. Horizontal, landscape, up and down, portrait. Okay? All right. So I'm just going to pick one of my objects to start with. The very first thing I do really is just totally freestyle. There's no math to it. There's no nothing. I'm just picking something. So what I'm going to do is this. We'll take a look at my still life again. I'm actually going to grab, do you see this tall bottle right here? Right? That guy right there. I'm going to draw him first, just because that's what my brain tells me to do. So, for no other reason than that. So I'm going to first, real quick, I'm going to draw a little square. So we're going to say that this is the size of my paper. Oops. Just so that I can actually have it on the page for you. You can see what the heck I'm doing. All right, so let's say this is the entire size of my paper. So I'm going to say, okay, in my composition, again, doing that L7 thing here. Oops. In my composition, I'm going to say that the top of that big tall bottle comes to about here-ish. Again, totally an ish. Okay? And there's kind of the mouth hole of that bottle. Okay? No magic to it. I just drew a little oval. That's all it is. Okay? Now that I have that, though, now I can start to use my comparative measurement and start to see back and forth as to what I'm actually doing. So again, let's look back here again. Everyone say hi. Hello. Hi. There you go. Okay. All right. So again, I'm going to take my pencil. You guys get to be me. I need to do this more often, this first person stuff. I'm going to take my pencil, or my charcoal in this case, and I'm going to kind of line it up and say, okay, let's see. If I take the lid of that, it looks about that wide. So I know that from here to here, that little tiny space is about the full length of my mouth. So I'm going to take that, I'm going to say, okay, let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, looks like maybe 4 or 5 for the height. So in other words, again, just for the sake of argument, I've got the width of the mouth of that bottle, and that makes up about 4 or 5 of the overall height. So I'm using a little comparative measurement, so I can go now on my picture. There's 1, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the bottom of my bottle is somewhere about here. Make sense? The basic principle of comparative measurement. I'm going to think about maybe drawing a plumb line. Plumb line basically just a nice line. I'm never going to use this again, but it kind of shows the middle of my bottle, right? So that way, if some of your objects are kind of all leany and wobbly, then you won't have to worry about that. I'm going to think about, as I'm drawing this, looks like the neck kind of comes down. And again, I'm going to do a little more comparative measurement for a second here, so bear with me. 1, 2. Looks like about 2 of these down, 1, 2, is about where the neck of the bottle, again, you can see here for a second. Let's just zoom in here. Can I do that? Whoa! Hi, guys. How are you? This is what you wanted, right? This is what you came for today. All right, so we're looking, that is way too close. We're looking at this bottle again, right? So I've got a little bit of the neck and then the big old bottle part of it, right? All right, so let's try this again. Okay. Now, if I'm looking at this, it looks, to me at least, like there's kind of a sphere. And again, if I'm using a little bit of measurement, it's almost like it can fit 1, 2. So the width of this bottle, something like this. Notice that I'm drawing relatively lightly, right? I'll even darken it a little bit so you can see it clearer. But you've got kind of a sphere right in here. This kind of comes down. And then there's kind of a, again, cylinder shape right in here somewhere. So there's a cylinder, a sphere, and kind of another cylinder shape. Again, notice it is by no means perfect. It is a sketch at best, right? All right. So now I can go through, before I ever start cleaning up, before I ever start thinking about detail, shading, texture, any of that stuff that we talked about, skip it all, because I've got other objects in this picture. It's not just one way cool bottle thing. I've got other stuff. So again, we kind of look again. This is going to be all day. You're loving it already. All right, so I've got this guy right here. He's the nice and tall dude. There he is. Then I've got a dude kind of right in front of him, right about there. And then it looks like there's some like wooden blocky things right here, maybe even another little white vase right there. So I'm going to see what I can fit, again, by comparatively measuring. So I'm going to take my pencil and kind of line things up on the actual still life itself. It looks like 1, 2, 3. So if I take this and go 1, 2, 3, it looks like the white bottle starts about there. Notice I didn't use the same measurement each time. Now that I have something new, I can use this as my measurement. Notice also I'm not using a ruler. It doesn't need to be perfect. We're kind of eyeballing this stuff, but we're eyeballing it with some level of context. All right. So then this kind of goes off into space, and there's actually a kind of a cylinder over here. I went right off the page too. Don't be afraid to draw on your drawing boards. Instead of having it just stop magically at the edge of the paper, draw right off the edge of the paper. That's okay. You're allowed to. So again, I'm going to do this a little bit. Let's see here. Okay, this is kind of a cylinder shape, and it looks like it stops right about here, and then it kind of comes to a cone. I need to know where that middle is. So again, a plumb line. And that cone kind of comes just beyond, just a hair beyond the bottle. Again, I'm just looking at my still life right now. Kind of a cone shape, and then there's another cylinder for the neck of the bottle. It's like a milk jug, and it kind of comes out like this, right to about 1, 2, right about there. Okay. All right. So again, now I've got 2 bottles, right? Now notice I've still got this stuff behind it, and if it annoys you, if you're anal retentive enough that you need to erase it, just smudge it. Don't worry about trying to erase everything. Notice I haven't used my eraser yet at all. Okay, so I've got now 2 bottles. They're overlapping. I know there's a sense of depth. I could talk about cast shadows, but we're not ready yet. We're almost ready. The next step here is I've actually got, I'm just going to kind of buzz through this. I've actually got another cylinder thing right in front of here. Kind of goes back into space a little bit. Some kind of like little jar looking thing. And I can actually see the back side of it, which means that this should move. So this is like the bottom right here, kind of looking into it. Okay. And looks like I've got got 3 pieces of wood, 1, 2, and 3. So I'm just going to draw a quick little line here just to kind of symbolize where this stuff is. And those are going to be cubes. You know how to draw cubes, so we're just going to do that. But again, I need to know how tall they are. So on this bottle right here, I'm going to go down right to about here. That's about the height of that one. So I'm going to do 1 first. It looks something like this. Now, as I'm drawing these cubes, notice I don't have really dark lines. If you're running into the problem where you're having these really, really dark lines, it's probably because either A, you're holding your charcoal like a pencil and you're trying to draw it like a marker. It's not a marker. It'll just make more chalk and it's not good. Maybe you're holding it the correct way, again, kind of joint-like, right? But again, maybe you're holding it, you've choked up so much on it that, again, it's getting you those really dark lines. So if you're finding that you're really having a hard time mastering the whole dark line stuff, just choke back on it, right? Like it's a dainty little toothpick or something. Because there's no pressure on the top of this, it has to be a light line. I can't push on it, right? It just gets like limp. It's not good, like bloop. Okay. All right. So that's what I'm doing for these wood blocks here. And again, I'm just going to kind of sketch these out a little bit using comparative measurement. I'm just not telling you each time about it because you would fall asleep more than you are already. Something like that. And then this guy actually, that line wasn't correct. This line actually goes back, and he comes to about halfway, about here, and something like that. Okay, so about there. There's actually another bottle right behind here, and again, I'm just going to kind of eyeball it. Comes about here. It goes off the page, kind of comes in a cone shape, and then back out. I can see just a hair of that, because it actually comes around like that. Again, if it gets to the point where there's too many lines, you get confused, just start smudging out the stuff that you don't need anymore. If there's something here, instead of erasing it, just keep what you need and get rid of the rest. Okay, so I'll get rid of some of this junk, because I don't need it. There's that, and then there's actually a little bit of like a fabric-y line right there, so I'll just throw that in. Now again, we're not stressed about fabric or anything, but this right now, as it stands, even though it looks like a big old garbage of mess and lines, this is blocking in. This is where you should have been yesterday, and it should have taken you all day yesterday to get to this point, right? If you feel like yours is beyond this, as in there's more completion to it, you might have gone a little too fast. It doesn't mean that that's okay. We all work at different speeds, okay? So take it with a grain of salt. But kind of get an idea that this is about where you should be now, okay? Now I'm going to burn through the next couple steps because we're going to talk more about this. But as for today, the next step you want to start thinking about is solidifying these objects. What are they really, right? So for example, up on this little neck where I started, there's actually a little lip kind of going around here. So I'm going to kind of draw another cylindrical shape. What a good sound, that nice squeaking sound. That'll give you nightmares. All right, so this kind of comes down. It does not come to a nice little right angle. In fact, it kind of smooths out. So I'm going to just kind of freehand that a little bit. And we talked about this before. If you find that freehand is maybe a little too much for you, imagine that there's a nice little circle right there. And I can kind of go with the outside of that circle, if that helps. If it doesn't, then don't. But notice again, even though I'm solidifying this, even though I'm kind of giving it more of an outline, I'm still not darkening the outline. It's still relatively soft enough that I can kind of erase it should I need to, right? You still don't want crazy heavy outlines. All I'm doing is telling my brain there's a little more detail in this guy. And I can do that for each one. Again, there's a little bit of a lip, actually kind of a fat lip right here. Oh, see, I'm going the wrong way. Something like this. This is going to get erased anyway. And notice I'm not afraid, I'm not stopping just because there happens to be something in my way. I'm going to draw right past it. And as I draw past it, I'll then erase what I don't need.
So is that when we start going dark?
What's that?
Is that when we start drawing it dark?
No, not quite yet. You're never going to really get to the darkness. What you're going to end up doing is you'll start adding more shadow than you would in outline. A good way to think about it just very quickly, and I'll kind of wrap up this demo here. A good way to think about it very quickly is if I draw, let's say, just something like you guys feel relatively comfortable with, right? So I did a circle, and then I did this, and I did some outlines, right? So some of your still life at this point may look like that, right? All I'm really doing, twofold. A, it's really flat because it has a heavy outline, and because it's got this flat bottom on it here. It just doesn't look realistic. But that beside the point, all an outline is telling your brain that one of these is lighter. Either the object is lighter or the background is lighter. That's all I'm really doing, right? And I'm drawing a dividing line like a wall saying that this right here is darker than this. So instead of drawing an outline, just literally make it darker, right? It's the same concept as drawing an outline, but even with a janky looking object like this is, and it is, trust me, but even with a janky looking object, having that softer edge where the shadow kind of wraps around it a little bit, it gives it a little more three-dimensionality already, just with that, just by killing this bold outline. You know what I mean? Because in real life, nothing has outlines, right? Now notice, we're only this far, right? I haven't even gotten to cast shadows. I haven't even gotten to cleaning up with my eraser. I've never even used it once, but we will, I promise. And now it's like stuck to me. So I'm going to go through and clean everything up. And then I'll start slowly but surely thinking about cast shadows. Because I've got these lamps on, it looks like there's kind of a shadow over here. So talking about, like you said, kind of darkening up a little bit. I'm going to apply a little bit of cast shadow. It's just a horrible sound. And there's a little bit of separation right here. Again, notice I'm not trying to be perfect about it. I'm going to go through and kind of blend it out. I'm just using my finger. If you find that you don't like using your finger because you don't like getting dirty, because you will, if you feel that way, that's okay. Grab like a piece of paper towel in the back. You can actually use that. It's kind of a makeshift finger. It'll work just fine. So I kind of go through, and even then I'm going to kind of fade it out just a little bit. It's not a perfect silhouette, but a little bit softer. Now it kind of looks like this thing's popping out just a little bit, right? Now this bottle is in front of this bottle, so that's going to have a little bit of shadow and from the directionality of the lighting, it's just a little bit here. And kind of, because this is curved, I want to make sure to add that shadow a little bit with the contour. So I'm going to kind of blend that out. All right, so now I've got one object in front of another object, which is in front of the background, right? Now I'm adding in those layers using my shadow, right? So by the end of today, again, if you're not quite there, or if you're a little ahead, that's okay. We all work at different paces. By the end of today, you want to be about to this point. You've cleaned up your objects, you've blocked them in, and you're starting to add some shadow, okay? Again, we all work at different paces. If you're crazy behind, that is okay. You have 4,